Well, people talk about toxic masculinity and easy fix. Be a gentleman, be a mensch. That's it. This is done. Be a gentleman, be a mensch. A gentleman is never rude by accident.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
We're back at it again. Good morning to you. It is the BJ Show, and that is John Combest. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Brad. I love the drop at the beginning, and I think that your masculinity is not toxic. In fact, I think it is a tonic, Brad. I think we should all ingest it into our veins. Inject it into our veins.
Did you say it was atomic?
No, a tonic. T-O-N-I-C.
Oh, tonic. I thought you said atomic.
No, not like Atomic Habits, the book that every wannabe entrepreneur talks about and then doesn't act on. No, tonic. T-O-N-I-C.
Gotcha. Okay, that is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. He runs his website. It's called johncombest.com. He's done it for 23 years now. It's safe to say that? Or have we passed the...
Yeah, we've passed the anniversary.
Which he won't tell me what it is. But 23 years ago, he started this. He's never missed one single day. He recaps in sort of the Drudge style all the things going on around the state of Missouri, which he thinks are newsworthy. And we start off the show with what John deems to be the top 3 of all the things that are on his website today. We got this guy by the name of...
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he comes in, and what do you do, Mr. Kasem?
Now on with a countdown.
He does a countdown. He start off with...
In third place...
Yesterday marked the 1-year anniversary of the Hamas attacks, Brad. And throughout the state of Missouri, we had a number of events that were marking it's certainly not a celebration, but marking the historic event. We had events here in St. Louis at the Jewish Community Center. So I linked to a Post-Dispatch photo gallery about that. Political stars, including Wesley Bell, attended that event. Also, there were events in Columbia. I would flag 2 specific stories that I have up today, Brad. One is from Columbia, and it's from really a pro-Palestine group that's talking about how they're advocating for a ceasefire, making the arguments that both sides have done horrible things in this war. And then Congressman Mark Alford was on Pete Mundo's show on KCMO Talk Radio, talking a little bit about the state of things, the Biden-Harris administration, et cetera. So a somber day of remembrance of the October 7th Hamas attacks, Brad.
And do you think it was properly done, or your opinion on that?
In terms of like the event in St. Louis?
Well, it's very politically charged because of the fact you have a lot of people who are still saying, okay, look, they took these hostages. They're still American hostages. How come nothing's being done about this?
Yeah. And that was, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was Mark Alford's point, too, in his interview with Pete Mundo, Brad. Like, what has happened?
Right. And the sad part of it is you don't even really hear much about it anymore. Obviously the majority of the hostages were taken were Jewish people, but there were, I think, a couple of the people that are still being held hostage are Jewish American dual or Israeli American dual citizens, but still doesn't make any difference. The sad part of this whole crazy thing is that, all it would take is the Hamas people essentially say, okay, look, we messed up. Here's your hostages back. Leave us alone. Don't bomb us anymore. But no, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, and I've had so many people tell me, oh, it's terrible the way the Israelis are treating the Palestinians. I go, okay, imagine if you lived in let's say Wildwood, and every day the people in Chesterfield fired rockets at you.
Yeah.
How do you think you'd feel about the people in Chesterfield? You know what I'm saying? I
do know. I mean, I would send a bunch of troops to go invade Chesterfield Mall.
Right. What's left of it?
I mean, there's no question. I don't mean to make a joke about the Israel-Palestine situation. But yeah, no, you're exactly right, Brad. And I mean, there's a whole lot of but what about that goes on when you talk about this. Yeah, but what about what Israel's doing? But what about the horrible things that Israel's doing?
Well, the interesting part of this is if you look at it, and to the point where Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, as his friends call him, has made this point that they are not the aggressors. Almost every single one of these things, you go back to the wars, which happened through the years since Israel created after World War II. They're never the ones, hey, let's go invade Jordan. It's never that. It's always the other way around. And it's like if you have. It's sort of like if you have somebody on, and I think everybody's lived through this. You live in a neighborhood and there's one jerkazoid down the street who's always causing problems. He's the guy that's doing all sorts of nasty stuff and to the point where it's like, okay, dude, just leave us alone and we won't bother you. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I know exactly what you mean. And every street has a Hildebrand.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, wouldn't you? I thought of you this weekend, Brad, when I did a little trimming of my grass and I scalped it to about a ½ inch. And I thought of you, Brad. I did it in homage of you. Countries fight over religion and land and also money. And money is the subject of story number 2 today.
Well, let me end by one thing. Years ago, a guy, I don't know who he was. I can't remember. He was some very interesting dude. He said, think about this. Everything we have, every skirmish we have, be it wars, world wars, be it your neighbor next to you, it's all about territory. It's all about territory. And as long as you understand almost every bad thing that's happened in the history of mankind is about territory, then you'll understand what it's all about, right?
It's true, yeah. I mean, it's like that time that guy tried to hit on Ira Linville in front of you, and you were like, get out of here, pal. This is my girlfriend.
Ina Metzger was her real name. Okay.
Whatever.
Okay. Here we go.
Up a notch to number 2.
It looks like a little bit more trouble brewing for St. Louis Development Corporation and St. Louis City. And Brad, I say this because it looks like now Democrats are starting to ask more questions about this program. Now, you remember we talked about the fact that all these grants have been given out. It was originally pandemic money, and then it was going to be like, hey, if we got a big pot of money, let's spend it on the north side, particularly of St. Louis City. Let's get some economic activity going to help fuel this renaissance. People are looking really closely at these grants that are in line to be handed out, Brad. And the 2 most recent aspects of it are that St. Louis Comptroller Darlene Green is questioning the Board of Aldermen, the St. Louis Development Corporation, and even Tishaura Jones about what the heck went on with this grant approval program. You say, John, sure, people have had questions. We've read about this for a while. What's the big deal? Well, according to the Post-Dispatch piece today, Brad, Darlene Green has been seen as a confidant, as a supporter of Mayor Tishaura Jones. So the fact that Darlene Green is coming out and asking questions about St. Louis Development Corporation is a little bit of maybe, I don't know, you could consider like a chink in the armor of protecting this program. This piece to us, by the way, is brought to us by Jacob Barker. And then the second piece I would point out, Brad, is from St. Louis Magazine, which is, run by Sarah Fensky now. And she has a quote from the unfortunately named Steve Butts, who's talking about the fact that he went to State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick's office, his chief of staff, and said, hey, I'm sure a bunch of people have come to you and said you need to look at this. But you guys need to look at this. And then Fitzpatrick's office said, actually, we haven't gotten any complaints about this, but we will treat this as a whistleblower complaint, and we will begin an investigation into whether or not we need to do an audit of this program. So to be clear, and Sarah Fensky does a really good job in her St. Louis Magazine piece pointing this out, this doesn't mean an audit is underway. It just means that State Auditor Fitzpatrick's office is investigating whether or not an audit needs to be conducted. The bottom line is, Brad, you have more and more people now with a D behind their name saying, whoa, all this money being handed out is not being done in a transparent way, and we need to stop this. We need to put the brakes on this until we figure out how the heck these awards were given out.
And that is the controversy that is surfaced about so many of these are like shall we say patronage awards? They're relatives or buddies or friends of the people in who are in power. Isn't that essentially
that's fair to say. And the Post-Dispatch has laid out the fact that I believe it's over $1 million has been given out to the Hubbard family. in St. Louis. And so that would be, general kinfolk of the Hubbard family were in line for a lot of money. And as the Post-Dispatch has also pointed out, some of these businesses don't even have real operations in St. Louis City, Brad. They're either located in Shrewsbury or other places. And to be clear, I think in fairness, we should point out that a number of the folks in line to get grants are community groups like Boys and Girls Club, like legitimate groups that have a real presence in North St. Louis City. But of course, it's the ones that appear to be skirting the rules or are just patronage handouts that's making everybody upset.
Do you know what I was really upset about when I looked at that
What's
list
that,
of
Brad?
grants? There was not one single grant to anybody who works for the St. Louis Public Schools. I mean, how can that be?
Yeah, well, they had to reroute it. They sent it up to Oswego, Oregon, and then they sent it up to Seattle. And then they sent it to the shoeshine guy at SeaTac, who sent it to a woman named Millicent. Or maybe it's Millipede. I don't remember what the woman's name is. But anyway, she got a contract for increasing business flow, so that's pretty good. You know what I would do, Brad? If I was one of the candidates running against Tishaura Jones, if I was like Michael Butler or I was Cara Spencer, not only would I highlight this in terms of the city is wasting money, but, we hear that story all again and again and again. Hey, they're wasting taxpayer money. And people get, I think, numb to it. What I would point out if I was them is not only is the city wasting all this money, but other people are getting rich. The mayor's friends are getting rich. So it's not enough, in my opinion, to say that the government's wasting money. But where's that money going? It's making other people rich. If you're a small business owner in North City and you run a hair business or you sell trinkets on Etsy or you do whatever you have to do to make a few bucks on the side, why aren't you getting that community money? Why aren't you getting that grant money? Oh, the mayor's friends are getting that money. There's nothing that inspires people like a little bit of envy and a little bit of jealousy, Brad. And that's what I would be appealing to if I was Cara Spencer or Michael Butler.
John, first off, two questions for you. I took down a little note when you're talking. Who owns the St. Louis Magazine now? Obviously, it's not Ray Hartman anymore, correct?
I don't know, Brad. I don't know who that is. I have their website up right now, and I could look into that real quick.
I was just curious because Ray ran it for a number of years, and it's interesting because I have to be honest with you, magazines have gone by the wayside, but St. Louis Magazine seems still to have been kept relevant. You know what I mean? There's still people that like to look at the physical magazine. Obviously, they have the website.
Yeah, the society pages and all the pretty people gather in Clayton and dress up. Yeah, I mean, I think there'll always be a market for that. It's owned by something. Sorry to interrupt, Brad, but it's owned by something called the SLM Group, the SLM Media Group, whoever that is.
Don't know who that is. Okay, last but not least,
The number one.
From Jefferson City, Missouri, Scott Fawn's Midweek Update hosted one of my favorite guests, a guy named Jonathan Ratliff. He's a well-known Republican political consultant. He's always a real straight shooter. He's a little bit of a pessimist when it comes to Republican campaigns. So he was on yesterday giving his insight. Also, Senator Ben Brown from Freedom Loving Franklin County, Brad. State Senator Ben Brown and Ratliff broke down the races along with Scott Fawn and talked about some big picture stuff. And then they went real local. So they talked about some local state Senate races, like the one that was the former district of Phil Cristofanelli, which is now Adam Schnelting's district. The district that features David Gregory versus a guy named Joe Peerless. And also talked about how the abortion amendment will affect some of these local Republican races. Two important things that I wanted to flag for you, Brad, because we talk about these quite a bit. On the sports betting amendment, Jonathan Ratliff believes that it's going to fail. He thinks that Missourians are more likely to say no than they are to say yes. The other thing about that I'd point out, Scott Fawn has made this point a couple times, and it's one that you and I never really talked about, Brad, which is you and I spend a lot of time talking about, hey, is the money really going to education? Hey, how much money will be going to education? Scott points out that there's a whole lot of people in Missouri that just say, I don't care where the money goes. I just want to bet on sports.
Well, I'm
going to vote yes on this.
That was the interview.
And I think oftentimes we overlook that, Brad.
Well, no. But what's interesting, that was the interview with Mark Reardon. He essentially said, I don't care. I just want to bet on sports.
Yeah, I just want the freedom to be able
Right.
to do
And-
whatever I want to with my money.
Well, once again, libertarian in me is like, okay, I guess the thing that bothers me about this whole thing is that it's just a charade. It's a charade of, you and I kid about when you came up with the great thing. I said legalize prostitution. You came up with the campaign escorts for education.
Yeah.
Or we could have crackheads for education, or whatever.
Crackheads for calculus.
Right. Crackheads for calculus. Every penny of the money that's sold for crack in the state of Missouri will go to help teach calculus in our schools. When most of the kids can't even pass geometry, stuff like that. I don't know. To me, once again, and what the interesting point is, and remember where we had Brooke, help me with her
Brooke
last
Foster.
name, Brooke Foster on the air. Even she didn't have the answer, the definitive answer of why the sports teams are for this. Once again, we had...
I think we know, Brad, but because it increases viewership.
Yeah, but once again, there's got, here we go again. It's almost like, and I'm going to say something which is actually sort of maybe inappropriate. Some people may find this offensive, but it's like the Kamala Harris thing. 4 years ago, she was against fracking. Now she's for fracking. 4 years ago, she was against this. Now she's for that. Whatever. Go back in history. We have Pete Rose. I put this up on my Facebook page. I don't know if you saw this or not. And actually, it made me very sad when I found this. This is a honest-to-goodness letter that was written by Pete Rose to... have you seen this letter before?
No, who's it to? Faye Vincent was the one I think that kicked him out of baseball.
Okay, this letter was written 2 years ago. Okay, this is on a website called Baseballer, and it said about 2 years ago, Pete Rose composed this letter to MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred asking for forgiveness. It starts up by saying, to Rob Manfred, Commissioner of Major League Baseball, I've apologized many times for both betting on baseball games while managing the Cincinnati Reds and for denying that I did. I'm writing today for 3 reasons. First, because at my age, I want to be 100% sure that you understand how much it means to me to say that I'm sorry. Second, to ask for your forgiveness. And third, because I still think every day about what it would mean to be considered for the Hall of Fame. He goes on several paragraphs. Once again, back then it was taboo, 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 taboo. And to the point where, I don't know if you know this or not, to the point as Las Vegas grew in population, there was always comments about, why doesn't Las Vegas have a baseball team? Why don't they have a NFL team? And the answer was because the sports themselves wanted nothing to do with Las Vegas. They wanted to stay as far away from gambling as they could. Now, look what you got. You got the Raiders that are already in Las Vegas. You've got the Oakland A's, who officially played their last game, I think it was last week, in Oakland. And for the time being, they're going to be playing in West Sacramento until their new stadium in Las Vegas. Explain the flip-flop to me. And to the point where I have friends of mine that know the baseball, industry real well. I say, okay, explain to me why 20 years ago, if you would have said, hey, the Cardinals, what do the Cardinals think about gambling, sports gambling? Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it should happen. There's no way that, now it's like a 180, but yet nobody will say exactly why they changed their minds. I know
think it's because a lot of old fuddy-duddies die, Brad. A lot of your contemporaries go 6 feet deep every day. So you have old people dying out. You have a gradual loosening.
I don't consider myself a fuddy-duddy because I'm Mr. Libertarian. I'm for saying, hey, you want cocaine? Go to the cocaine store on the corner of Lindbergh and Delmar or whatever, I mean,
that's true. That's true. Okay, so I won't put you in the fuddy-duddy category, but I will put you in the older folks category. Well, people your age have a tendency to die out, Brad. Then in general, it just becomes more like people don't bat an eye at betting on sports anymore. Like it's just society has evolved and we don't think that's as big of a deal. And Brad, you give your weekly talk about the fact that if you were in high school and somebody came to you and talked about drug legalization and sports betting and all these other things, you wouldn't believe it.
I'm not going to ever say it again, John, because you make fun of me when I bring it up. But
no, I don't make fun of you. I think it's a good point. Hey, every day we have people listening that haven't heard these stories before, and I think it's a really good point. I don't want to bury the lead too on This Week in Missouri Politics because Scott mentioned this because he was getting comments throughout the show. Ben Brown has a brand new haircut, Brad.
Don't tell me he's a chrome dome now.
No, it's I love it. I was a big fan of. Do you remember Kid and Play?
No.
Okay, they were like a hip hop group, like '89. They had roll the roll, Kid and Play now, oh la, hey. And so he has like Kid from Kid and Play. Like, I think it's awesome. We know that a lot of that stuff is coming back now. I love it. Scott was suggesting that people on the comment line were clowning Ben Brown. I don't know Ben Brown, so I'm not biased one way or another. But like, I love the haircut. I think Ben Brown should stay with it. I also love Kid and Play, and I think it's a good look.
John, on the outside, if you met John in person, you would never understand. You would never imagine that he's a expert on rap and hip hop. I mean, he's the guy.
I know a few lyrics. I wouldn't call myself. I'm not a backpatter, Brad.
You know more than a few lyrics. Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?